What's going on, guys? Sticks here with the Token Minorities, bringing you another deck on Pokemon TCGO, and today I am bringing you a deck that really has come into, well, it's like come into favor, then fallen out of favor, and then is kind of seems to be coming back a little bit, but falling off at the same time. But either way, it's still a relevant, cool meta deck, and that is a deck centered around Tapu Bulu-GX and Vikavolt. And before I get into the deck, just a reminder that if you guys like this video or found it helpful, please leave a like, drop a comment, click that subscribe button, helps out a lot, and lets us do more cool stuff for you guys. And as for the question of the day, Vikavolt's strong charge ability is one of the most powerful accelerations in the game. In fact, in the current meta, I think it is the most... Is it the most powerful ability acceleration? I think it is. But once during your turn, you may search your deck for a Grass Energy and a Lightning Energy and attach them to your Pokemon in any way you like. That doesn't mean just attach them to one, that doesn't mean attach them to different, it means you can attach them in any way that you like. So, I mean, having two Vikavolts, you have 4 extra attachments from your deck. Like, you don't even have to have them in your hand or in the discard pile, it's from the deck, which lends itself to some problems later in the game. But, I mean, there are ways around that. But either way, Strong Charge is incredibly, incredibly powerful. And that got me thinking, if other types had this type of acceleration, like if there was, say, a... I don't know, like, I'm just going to randomly spout something, like an Incineroar. Like, I know that that doesn't make much sense, but if there was an Incineroar that searched for a Fire and a Darkness energy and allowed you to do that in the same way, would that be as strong as Strong Charge is? And so, yeah, the question of the day is, what Pokemon with what typing do you think would be would allow Strong Charge to be the Strong Charge-like ability to be the strongest? Which would you say was broken, and which would you say is kind of the least powerful? I mean, I know that that's kind of a lot, but basically, what 2 energy types, when put together, do you think would be the strongest in that type of ability? And what 2 energy types do you think would be the worst when put together with that ability? And I mean, of course, you can just, and I mean, if you want to, you can come up with a Pokemon for it as well, for each of those as well. I'm actually very curious to see what you guys come up with. Honestly, I would say, I'm actually not fully sure. Like, I've thought about this and I've like tried to think about one way or the other or how that would work, but I feel like Fire for sure, and then probably Fire, and then maybe Water to use Manaphy. Yeah, okay, so if we had like Fire and Water acceleration in a Volcanion deck, you all of a sudden can use Manaphy's Free Retreat while accelerating Fire Energy. So, okay, yeah, there we go. A Fire and Water acceleration would be one of the strongest in my opinion. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts, and also what Pokemon you come up with for that. But anyway, on to the deck. Like I said, it is centered around Vikavolt and Tapu Bulu. Now, I've already done decks around each of these guys individually. I did one around Vikavolt and Vikavolt GX, and then I did one around Tapu Bulu and Lurantis, but I ended up just missing the combination that would make these guys super strong, in that when you put them together, they're arguably at their best. Now, Tapu Bulu is really the main attacker of this deck. Horn Attack does 30 damage, 1 for 30, not horrible, but not great. Nature's Judgment for 3 energy does 120, and if you discard all energy attached to this Pokemon, this attack does 60 more, so all of a sudden you're hitting for 180. And really, this attack is what the deck is all centered around. It's getting energy onto Tapu Bulu, hitting for 180, and then just continually hitting for 180, hoping your opponent is not able to overcome that. And then we also have the Tapu Wilderness GX attack, which 150 damage, so not quite the power that Nature's Judgment has, but still 3 energy for 150. You don't have to discard any energy, and you heal all damage from this Pokemon. So Tapu Bulu is actually kind of bulky with 180 HP, so it'll take a lot for it to be one-shot. And then if your opponent is putting it in range of being 2-shot, then you just Tapu Wilderness, heal the damage, and go from there. So basically the combination of Bulu and Vikavolt is what this deck is all about. Vikavolt, you just get it into play, start accelerating energy onto Tapu Bulu, and go from there. Now, you might be looking at this deck and thinking, well, you've seen a bunch of different versions of this. I tried to just go as streamlined as possible. Like, I really didn't try to tech out this deck all too much. I just tried to make it straight up Vikavolt, Bulu, that type of thing. Just because, I mean, like, I know that there are a bunch of different decks out there. Like, I know that there's some decks that use Vikavolt GX. There are decks that use Tapu Koko, which actually would be pretty cool to try. But I just went with as streamlined as I possibly could. Just all the focus on Bulu, all the focus on Vikavolt with the combination of Bulu. So I highly encourage you guys to try out Vikavolt GX as well as Tapu Koko GX. If you are to try this deck out for yourself, this is just what I went with. As for the rest of the Pokemon, we have 2-1 of Lele and Shaymin. I mean, I know that a lot of people are just getting rid of all Shaymin in decks, and I actually completely understand that, and I support that in many cases. This is honestly just a complete personal preference. I really like Shaymin in this deck. I mean, I really like Shaymin in general, because it's one of those cards like, okay, if you don't need it, then you just don't play it and you don't discard it, that type of thing. But it can save you to where if you have, like, well, mainly I'm using it late game. Like, if I just need a couple more cards, all of my supporters, all of my draw supporters are in the discard pile, so Ultra Balling for a Lele won't do anything. Having a Shaymin as a way of instant draw support, in addition to being able to use my supporter for the turn, just proves invaluable a lot of times. So that's why I still like this Shaymin. But I also encourage you guys to try out not having Shaymin and just 3 Lele. We have 3-2-3 of Grubbin, Charjabug, and Vikavolt. Just try to get up a Vikavolt as quickly and consistently as possible. You technically only need 1 Vikavolt for this deck to work, but having 2 is invaluable and is phenomenal and makes this deck work so much better and just makes it so much harder to deal with. So 1 is the absolute minimum you need. 2 makes this deck quite the monstrosity. 3, Tapu Bulu, because, I mean, hey, main attacker, all that stuff. I mean, we want to start with it and we want to end with it. So if your opponent also knocks out 3 Bulu, they win anyway, so that's why there's 3 of them. 2 Lele, like I said, also an attacker with Energy Drive. And then onto the items, we have 1 Energy Recycler. Now, in my early versions of Vikavolt, I had Energy Recycler and Brock's Grit. I actually really... Well, I usually either had one or the other. I need to have both in the deck for it to work properly, because Energy Recycler... I mean, Brock's Grit is good for getting 6 back late game. Energy Recycler is kind of a... Well, I need a Lysandre and the ability to put back energy this turn, so Energy Recycler is great for that. Also, just having 2 ways of doing that. Brock is more consistently able to do that because of VS Seeker, while Energy Recycler is kind of a, oh, I get to do this and I get to use my supporter for the turn. So that's why I have both of those in the deck. 1 Field Blower because Garbotoxin completely shuts this deck down, and we kind of sort of want to use our abilities, particularly Vikavolt, because that's what makes this deck good. 1 Heavy Ball. Now, I actually used to have 2 Level Ball, but I realized that Heavy Ball is just kind of better, because while you can't search out Grubbin with Heavy Ball, in this deck, you're going to have a couple Grubbin down anyway with Brigette, because Lele into Brigette is the usual first turn for this deck. So Heavy Ball allows you to grab Charjabug, Vikavolt, and Bulu, all of whom have 3 retreat cost. Well, that's a Lele, I guess. I hate how it doesn't just go straight across. But yeah, so you have Charjabug, Vikavolt, and Bulu, all of whom with 3 retreat cost, meaning that you don't have to discard and you can just use Heavy Ball to search them out. And also, like I said, Brigette usually gets you your Charjabugs anyway, so you don't need to search them all that much. In the event that you don't get a turn 1 Brigette, which happens sometimes, I mean, usually that this deck list is consistent enough to where you're able to pull it off. But we still have Level Ball to be able to search out Grubbin and Charjabug. 2 Rare Candy to go straight from Grubbin to Vikavolt. 4 Ultra Ball to guarantee get the Pokemon that we want when we want it. 4 VS Seeker to reuse all of our supporters. And before I get into supporters, one thing that people have pointed out, or have pointed out to me in the past, is that I would use Vikavolt with Rare Candy and Forested Giant Plants, which kind of can seem counterintuitive, but Forested Giant Plants is really for just that first turn to be able to play a Grubbin down and get a Charjabug in the same turn. And you want to get a Vikavolt up as consistently as possible by turn 2. Forested Giant Plants and Rare Candy give you 2 ways to do that. If you're not able to get a Charjabug up turn 1 through Forested Giant Plants, then you can Rare Candy directly into a Vikavolt. Otherwise, you can Forested Giant Plants into a Charjabug and then Charjabug can evolve into a Vikavolt next turn. So this just gives you 2 ways of getting a Vikavolt up by turn 2. And now onto the supporters, running 4-4 of Sycamore and N. I've started trying this line, and I actually really like it in this deck. It just gives you that draw when you need it. I mean, just gets you your resources, have them available. You don't have to use VS Seekers all the time. You don't have to use as many items with these draw supporters and with higher lines of draw supporters. So it gives you a little bit better of a matchup against Garbodor. 2 Lysandre as usual, because I mean Lysandre is Lysandre. 1 Hex Maniac because we don't really rely on abilities going into turns, we rely on abilities during turns. So having Hex Maniac can shut down decks like Metagross, which otherwise would actually be pretty problematic for this deck to deal with, because with the Choice Band, Giga Hammer just OHKOs us, and we have no way of OHKOing it back, so our only real hope is to Hex Maniac and try to keep their Geotech system from being able to do too much, or just stack up damage on them to where they can't come back. 1 Broxgrit, like I said, for the Energy Recursion, because you're discarding with Nature's Judgment, and then Vikavolt with Strong Charge. Unfortunately, it needs to be from the deck, not from the discard pile, so Broxgrit puts those energy back in the deck. And then 2 Brigets, I mean, I've seen 1 quite a bit, but I just like 2 because the turn 1 Brigette is so ridiculously important in this deck. So I decided to run 2 so that you're not susceptible to having it prized, and that you're actually able to draw into it occasionally and not simply just have to Ultra Ball into Lele. So basically, I mean, 4 Ultra Ball, 2 Lele, and 2 Brigette make it so that you will probably be able to get a turn 1 Brigette more often than not. 3 Float Stones. We're not running any Choice Band because, I mean, quite frankly, I didn't have the room. If you were to run Choice Band, I would get rid of 1-1 of N and Sycamore, put 2 Choice Band in. I just decided to kind of forego those just simply because N and Sycamore, I mean, I just went with those for a higher line of supporters. I decided to try it out instead of Choice Band, simply due to the fact that this deck normally hits hard enough anyway, and if something isn't knocked out by 180, it's not going to get knocked out by like 210. So I mean, that's just kind of something I noticed. Yes, there are a bunch of exceptions like the stage 1s and stuff like that, but in general I didn't find myself needing Choice Band all that much in my testing, so I decided just to add an extra 1-1 of N and Sycamore. So I mean, ignore the fact that there's not a big difference between 180 and 210, because the more I think about it, the more I realize that there is. I just found myself not needing it all that much, so I decided to stick with those. 3 Float Stone because Vikavolts are incredibly bulky, and so they have high retreat costs, which you don't want to have to pay. And then finally, 7-5 of Grass and Lightning. More Grass than Lightning because Bulu relies on more Grass, but also comparable numbers of Lightning because Strong Charge gets 1 of both. So yeah, that is the deck. I've talked for way too long. Let's go ahead and see it in action. Alrighty, we have found one against Famikun 1990. I have no idea how to say that. We do luckily win the coin flip, so that means we will get to go first, which this deck 100% likes to do. I mean, really the only attack you can get off is like a horn attack for 30 damage, but if it's between not going first and then being able to hit for 180 turn 2, or just hit for 30 turn 1 and then 180 turn 2, I'm always like, well, you know what, I'd rather just go first and hit for 180 with my opponent only having 1 turn under their belt. So we do mulligan, and we mulligan again. There we go, there's Bulu. So let's play that there, and I just realized I'm playing Tapu Koko. Oh, I was like, why am I playing the Tapu Koko sleeves? Well, this was originally adopted from a version that plays Tapu Koko. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is Brigette, get a couple Grubbin and a Tapu Bulu out, and then Level Ball, probably just grab a Charjabug for next turn. Let's see, the Lele are in there. And it looks like we are up against a Metagross Solgaleo deck, which could be actually very interesting. I'm going to hope that we can get going faster than them, because otherwise, once they get set up, it's actually going to be very difficult, because we won't be able to take one-hit knockouts, and then they can just max potion off any damage that I might potentially do to them. So this could actually be a very tricky matchup. My opponent does end me. That was also something I was kind of hoping he would do, just because I level balled for a Charjabug. I kind of wanted to try to bait him into that. And this is actually beautiful, because what I can do... I'm going to be getting rid of 2 energy, though. Actually, you know what? No, I don't even need the Forest. So let's grab the... Yeah, let's just grab a Vikavolt. Maybe. Potentially. Hopefully. Somebody. There we go. Okay, so let's Rare Candy up my Grubbin into not Charjabug, but Vikavolt. Let's evolve my other Grubbin into Charjabug. And then I'm going to go ahead and play the energy onto Tapu Bulu, and then Strong Charge, be able to knock out this Beldum immediately, and then Sycamore for a brand new hand. So here we go. This is where I'm going to be able to start just exploding, and there's not much my opponent can do about it. I even have a Heavy Ball to grab another Vikavolt next turn, so let's just go for a Nature's Judgment, knock out this Beldum, and then be in an amazing position. For next turn, yeah, my opponent can get a... can potentially get a Solgaleo if they have, like, a Rare Candy plus Solgaleo. But at that point, I will just hit it for a ton of damage with Bulu. He evolves into Cosmoem, so I will be able to actually knock that thing out pretty easily. And my opponent's just going to Fan Club. What's he going to try to grab? Probably just a couple Beldum, or like a Beldum and a Lele. Yeah, there we go. So he does just grab a Beldum and a Lele. That is honestly fine with me, but this means my opponent can't end me this turn. So what I'm going to be able to do is just power up another Bulu, get another Vikavolt out if I want. My opponent Lysandre's. So probably just going to try to bring up a Vikavolt and stall for a little bit. But the thing is, I'll get another Vikavolt, and then I can just start attacking with those guys. So yeah, my opponent is going to go ahead and teleport. Well, I mean, he forfeits right there, so, I mean, did he teleport and realize, oh, wait, one of these is going to get knocked out, and without one of these, I am just going to lose? Because he'd either bring up Lele, which would give me 2 prizes, or he'd bring up Beldum, which would mean that his only Beldum would get knocked out. So, yeah, just decided to forfeit right there. We do take that win. It wasn't a very long match, but we did get set up very, very nicely. So, yeah, Vikavolt Bulu OP, and let's go ahead and try to find another one. Alrighty, we found another one against Pokemon X, and you might be noticing that this is sped up. I actually am, well, I played this match and live recorded it, and a little bit of spoilers, it ended up being just kind of a steamroll, like I just absolutely destroyed my opponent. So I'm gonna, like, I'm going back and just narrating over this because this is still a beautiful example of how this deck works, so I didn't want to just not have this in the video because this shows exactly how the deck is supposed to work, but at the same time I didn't want to make it last the entire, I think it was like 10-15 minutes or something like that, so I didn't want to just have it be that 10-15 minutes of me just sitting there just running through my opponent, but at the same time I wanted to show you guys exactly, well, I wanted to show you guys this match because it was a beautiful example of this deck being able to set up and what it can do when it sets up. So yeah, it's gonna be, I put it at like 2-3 times speed. I don't remember exactly what I did, but yeah, let's just go ahead. I mean, I'm showing you how I'm gonna set up. I'm gonna Lele for a Brigette, which is the normal start for this deck, just like getting a couple Grubbin and another Bulu out. I have an Ultra Ball for next turn if I need it. Well, actually, you know what? I'm just going to Ultra Ball this turn, grab a Shaymin. I'm getting rid of all my Float Stones this early, which was kind of bugged me a little bit. But, I mean, it didn't end up mattering because, I mean, I'm able to get a couple Grubbin down, get a couple Vikavolt in my hand for next turn, a Charjabug, and I have an N, which I'm probably just not going to end up playing because that would allow my opponent to have a fresh hand. And as you will see coming up, my opponent really just had a whole lot of nothing. We do see the Lysandre come out, so he's going to try to Lysandre stall a little bit. And, I mean, that's honestly going to end up being okay with me, just because I don't want to end, because my opponent clearly had nothing. So I'm just going to play the very slow game. And even with the resistance now, I'm going to be able to just not get hit by this Beldum at all. And what I'm actually deciding to do is go ahead and Electro Cannon with Vikavolt, just get rid of a bunch of energy. Well, not get rid of a bunch of energy, but knock out my opponent's Beldum with Electro Cannon because I do have Brock's Grit in my hand. And Yeah, I mean, as you can see, my opponent has absolutely nothing. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is just Lysandre up the Beldum with energy. I mean, just make sure that my opponent can't get anything going. I do have the Brock's Grit in my hand. Honestly, I'm kind of holding out, hoping that maybe I'll get a Charjabug or a Rare Candy, which I do. I mean, I get the Charjabug off the prizes right there, so I'll be able to just play the very slow game, slowly get a Charjabug set up, and then I'm just going to go ahead and Brock's Grit all those energy right back into the deck. Strong Charge, and then once again just hit for a ton of damage. I mean, I'm gonna actually power up the Bulu. Well, slowly power up the Bulu, just because, I mean, I wouldn't be able to get a knockout on the Lele this turn anyway. I might as well just spread my energy out a little bit, and yeah, go from there, I guess. I mean, my opponent is able to rescue Stretcher, but that's really all they're able to do. So, I mean, I have a Vikavolt set up. I'm about to get another Vikavolt set up next turn. And, I mean, yeah, this is just me absolutely destroying my opponent at this point. I even have two strong charges available. I was going to go ahead and try to Lysandre up the Lele, but I decided that, you know what, it's better just to Sycamore for a new hand, see what I can get. And then let's power up the Bulu, retreat manually with the Vikavolt. And see, this is the power of Strong Charge. I was able to manually retreat Vikavolt relatively easily. And then we just knock out the Beldum, get another energy, and I have a VS Seeker in my hand for Brock's Grit later if I need to, again, like if my opponent pulls up another Lysandre. So, yeah, there's the teammates. I think it's just, I mean, it obviously ended up being just a little bit too late for my opponent, but this is the exact reason why I still wanted to show you guys this match, even if I did have to speed it up exponentially as well as post-narrate it, because otherwise you'd hear me talking like a chipmunk if I did my live narrating on it. So, sorry about that, but again, I have two Vikavolt set up, I have two Bulus, and this match is just perfect for showing you the power that this deck has when it gets set up, and it gets set up actually pretty decently overall. So what I'm going to do right here is just Lysandre in that Tapu Lele, just kind of make the game even faster, knock that thing out, take two more prizes, be down to one prize, Rare Candy, and a VS Seeker that I can use for like Brock's Grid. I mean, I have the Energy Recycler in hand. Basically, I have the win. Depending on what my opponent does. I mean, he could obviously like Lele for Lysandre, bring up a Vikavolt, but even then, I think, would I be able to? Manual attachment 5. Yeah, I actually would be able to knock out the knock out a Lele with that. So I'm just going to Energy Recycler, Strong Charge, put both 2 energy onto the Bulu, and then just win this game in style with a Tapu Wilderness, and yeah, end the game right there. So I mean, yeah, that was a very, very lopsided, one-sided match that I didn't want to show you guys in regular speed, just because, I mean, it was such a body bag, but I still wanted to show you guys how strong and how powerful this deck is, and how many options it has once it gets set up. I mean, Strong Charge is absolutely absurd. So, yeah, hopefully you guys were still able to see what this deck did in that match and weren't just bored out of your mind. But yeah, let's go ahead and try to find another one. Alrighty, we have found another one against a Gambit 3-1-1-3 with a normal and fighting deck. So, fingers crossed that we're up against a Carbink, because if we're up against a Carbink, then, well, actually, if we're up against just like a Carbink Zygarde deck, then we are going to absolutely demolish that. Well, actually, almost all fighting that are ground instead of actual fighting, so they will have a grass weakness. So, fingers crossed on that one. Not sure what all is. I mean, I start off well, it would have been a very good hand, like if the Charjabug was Bulu. I mean, if that was a Bulu, then this would just be a perfect first turn hand, because then I would have been able to bridge it, get a couple Grubbin and another Bulu out, Ultra Ball for like a Shaymin or something like that. But unfortunately, not meant to be. So, just gonna have to mulligan. Sorry for the pause, I thought I heard something that was not reassuring, and wow. So, looks like we're just gonna mulligan for the umpteenth time, and I start off with I mean, could be worse. At the very least, I'll be able to have a Grubbin out. I'll be able to put an energy onto my Bulu and my opponent. And I will end my opponent so they don't just have like a hand of probably going to be 8 cards, I would think. Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure I mulliganed 3 times, and now we're just waiting on my opponent to say yes, he does want the extra mulligan cards, which, I mean, I can't imagine why you wouldn't. But, yeah, so we're just sitting here waiting for my opponent to click yes 3 times. Could be, there we go. And, well, it looks like they got another Pokemon off that, which is slightly unfortunate, because I would like to have ended them, and it's an Aerodactyl, Zygarde, and Groudon. So that's very unfortunate. I mean, it's fortunate for me because I'm going to be able to pretty easily take this match, but honestly, I don't think that it's... I mean, my opponent doesn't seem to be running like that overly competitive of a deck. So, and of course I get 2 Vikavolts off that immediately. Well, if I can get a couple Rare Candy, then that'll work. But let's go ahead and just play that down, play the Shaymin, maybe get a Charjabug or a Rare Candy or something. Well, I get an Ultra Ball, which can very easily turn into a Charjabug. So what I'm going to do is get rid of Vikavolt, and do I want to get rid of the Grass Energy? Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do that to grab the Charjabug. That way I can have a Vikavolt for next turn, just be able to power Bulu up and then knock out the Aerodactyl. And this is exactly why I like running Forest Giant Plants in this deck, because not only do you have Rare Candy as a way of getting a turn 2 Vikavolt, but you can abuse Forest Giant Plants a little bit with Grubbin into Charjabug. And I mean, my opponent does not look to be playing the most competitive deck, like I was saying. I mean, you have Aerodactyl EX, Groudon EX, and then Baby Zygarde Complete all in one deck together. So, I mean, yeah, okay, so I don't want to be insulting to my opponent. Like, I don't want to be like, oh, you're trash, you're such a noob, blah, blah, blah. But the cards that my opponent is playing don't inherently have any, like, obvious synergy apart from the fighting Pokemon being fighting. I mean, Aether Paradise Conservation Area, we saw that my opponent doesn't play any lightning or grass Pokemon, so that will literally not benefit him at all. And I mean, it actually will benefit me in this matchup. So I highly doubt that my opponent is that experienced of a player. It looks to be somebody who put together a deck with the cards that they had. And I'm not saying that, like, that's a bad thing, like, oh, you're such a noob for not having that many cards. No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that it looks like my opponent didn't have a very large selection of cards to choose from. And so he did put together a deck, and you know what? I actually encourage that. I mean, play. I mean, my opponent is playing until, like, is playing to try to build up his collection and get the cards that he would need for, in order to be able to get a deck that is more competitively built. Like, is built in a more competitive manner, in accordance with the current metagame. So, well, in accordance to how people build competitive decks in the game right now. So, yeah, we are able to get another we're able to get another 2 Vikavolt out. This time I got him turn 2, and at this point I think I'm just going to end up steamrolling my opponent, just because, I mean, I have all those things set up. I did draw all of my Sycamores already this game, so I mean, that's something. Otherwise, there's really not much more I could ask for in a setup, because, yeah, Groudon will come down. I'll be able to, like, Ultra Ball, thin out my deck a little bit, see what we got going. Let's just grab a Grubbin. Actually, you know what? Let's grab Charjabug, because I still have the Rare Candy in my deck, and then I'm just going to Sycamore away my hand. Probably should have Strong Charged first. And there are all my VS Seekers. Let's go ahead and then Strong Charge now. And yeah, I definitely should have Strong Charged last turn, because... Wait, I'm an idiot. So I'm only going to be able to Horn Attack this turn. But what I should have done was, when I saw that there was only one Grass Energy in the deck, attached it to the Bulu on the bench, played the Float Stone onto the active Bulu, and then retreated. So, yeah, I'm an idiot. But, I mean, I really don't think it's going to matter in this matchup, because, yeah, we even see the Pidgeot come down, which, is not going to do anything. My opponent's own stadium is working against him right now. Attaching the lightning, and then I'm just going to Energy Recycler 3 back into the deck, and wow, I must not have a ton of energy. I must have a decent amount prized, actually. But either way, just going to completely power up Tapu Bulu, put energy onto the Vikavolt that has that does not have the Float Stone, and then let's just knock out the Groudon with 120. Oh, no, knock out the Groudon with weakness, and okay, yeah, there's all my energy. It was in the prizes. So now we are one prize away, or one EX knockout away from winning the game, and my opponent just decides to concede, seeing that I had 2 Tapu Bulu set up. I could have gotten a Vikavolt set up, all that good stuff. So, yeah, not a particularly competitive match right there. But, I mean, hey, that's... Unfortunately, I take what the ladder gives me, and... I mean, still got a couple Vikavolt set up turn 2 with a couple Bulus, so that just shows you how incredibly powerful this deck is. And that's kind of one thing that's kind of cool about the TCG. Your deck can still work beautifully, and you can show off what your deck can do, despite what your opponent is running. I mean, unless they absolutely steamroll you, but that's just unfortunate. So, yeah, let's go ahead and try to find one last one with this deck. Alrighty, we found another one against Mickey Yellis with a... Honestly, like, whenever I see the type makeup of normal, psychic, and steel, I just kind of get a PTSD flashback to when Trevenant Break was in the format, and whenever I would play up against that. And okay, so I start with some stuff. I mean, at least I start with a Brigette. Okay, so it looks like we're up against a Solgaleo deck, which, I mean, hopefully it's a little bit more competitive than my other Solgaleo matchup. But I do start with the Brigette, which should be pretty nice. I have a couple Float Stone. I would like a way to get another supporter of some kind. Like maybe an Ultra Ball, or even just drawing a supporter. But yeah, let's go ahead and get So, that happened. I have a VS Seeker, I mean, I'm going to be able to bridge it for like a couple Grubbin and a Bulu if I want, or like a 2 Bulu and a Grubbin because I already have one out, which I think might actually be the course of action that I choose to take. But otherwise, okay, we see Lugia come down. I mean, that's never a bad thing actually to have in a Solgaleo deck, just because with Soul Burst GX you're able to put a ton of energy onto it and then just have that be a consistent attacker where you don't have to attach a bunch of energy. And yes, my opponent ends. Oh, thank the Lord. I was kind of hoping that my opponent would end instead of Sycamore because I got an extra card off of that mulligan. But we take those. And this is actually... Wow, this is a beautiful hand. Whew. I love this. Because what I'm going to be able to do is Ultra Ball for a Lele, which will grab me a Brigette, and then I will be able to put down a Grubbin and a Charjabug, and as well as a Bulu. Well, I'll be able to put down... okay, first things first, so I don't do this out of order. I'm going to Ultra Ball for the Lele, play down the Lele, grab a Brigette with the Lele, to be able to grab, like, I think it'd either be 2 Grubbins and a Bulu, or 2 Bulus and a Grubbin. I think because I already have a Grubbin active, I'm just going to grab 2 Bulus and a Grubbin. Unfortunately, once again, I don't have an energy to start this off. And then I'm going to Level Ball for the Charjabug, which, after I play Forest Giant Plants, I'm going to evolve my bench Grubbin into a Charjabug and end my turn right there. Okay, so I've done things like this before where I'm like, oh, I see like 5 steps ahead what I'm going to be doing, and then I misorder something and I end up losing the game. One thing that happened recently was I was playing a Garbodor deck, and I was playing with my Garbodor deck, testing it out, and I had the win because all I had to do was attach my DCE to my active Drampa, and then evolve my Trubbish on the bench into a Garbodor. Well, what ended up happening was I misordered something, and I put the DCE onto the Garbodor. So not only was I not able to attack, but all of a sudden my Garbodor had a useless DCE on it, and it cost me the game. So, yeah, I had to make sure that I wasn't screwing that up. What I am going to do right here is Ultra Ball get rid of the N and probably just the Lele. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. I mean, I have no reason to grab either of those. You know what? Let's just grab another Charjabug. It is in my deck. There's only one Rare Candy, so I'm not going to try to bank on being able to draw into Vikavolt plus Rare Candy off of that. But here we go. Let's go ahead and get a turn 2 Vikavolt. Get a Charjabug, and then let's Sycamore away my hand because I don't need the Lightning or the Forest Giant Plants. I'd like a Float Stone and a Grass Energy, which I even get. And would you oh, would you look at that? I draw into my 1 Rare Candy and a Vikavolt. So I mean, that's something. But what I will be able to do here is power up my Bulu completely and then be able to one-shot this Lugia this turn, get another Vikavolt up next turn. And I'm just in a phenomenal spot right here. Yeah, Lugia goes down. There goes his DCE. Even if he brings up a... Even if he gets a Solgaleo, I think I should be okay with all of the attacks that I'm going to be able to... use. And we do see... Okay, interesting. Oh, okay, so Aura showed me a deck list kind of similar to that. It's a Solgaleo deck where it uses this Solgaleo, the baby Solgaleo, to hit for 160 damage over and over, and then you just use like Ultra Road to switch in, switch out, that type of thing. So it's a very, very cool deck. I really do like it. But this baby Solgaleo is not a threat at all. I mean, okay, 160 damage is a threat. But unless he has a choice band, he's not going to be knocking out anything. Like, he's not going to be knocking out my Bulu. 170, never mind. Okay, that's a little bit more threatening. Because now he is going to be able to OHKO my Vikavolts through resistance. If he has, like, even if he just has a Delmise, he's going to be able to one-shot my Bulu. So this is a little bit scarier. But he is just going to start targeting down my Vikavolt, which I'm actually okay with. But here we go. I am going to start powering up another Vikavolt. Well, not powering up. I am going to play down another Vikavolt so I can have more strong charges going. And, okay, yeah, my opponent just forfeits right there. Great. So what I was actually going to do was Lysandre up the Cosmoem on the bench because a baby Solgaleo is not that threatening. I can knock that thing out in one shot whenever I want. A Solgaleo GX would be where things would start to get problematic because that thing could get, that thing would have to be two-shotted. I have no means of one-shotting it, and then it can one-shot all of my stuff with Sunsteel Strike, and then potentially play games with like Max Potion and stuff like that, Soulburst GX. So I was going to Lysandre up that Cosmoem and knock it out, and then my opponent would really have had nothing, so I would have been able to knock out that Solgaleo the next turn anyway. But, yeah, my opponent just ended up conceding because, I mean, once again, I got 2 Vikavolts out, and once you have 2 Vikavolts out, you're able to get 5 energy per turn consistently, which is absolutely absurd. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the deck. Definitely try out Tapu Koko if you want. I mean, I can see why people run it, and I actually encourage people to run it. I just decided to try to go as streamlined Bulu as possible. But anyway, hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff, and this is Styx signing out. Why not? See you guys.